I'd like to call to order the Town of Corte Madera regular town council meeting for Tuesday, May 16th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. Can I get a roll call?
Councilmember Casissa.
Here.
Councilmember Avazio.
Here.
Councilmember Thomas. Here. Vice Mayor Beckman.
Here.
Mayor Lee.
Here. Can we do a salute to the flag?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, item number 2, this is open time for public comment. Any member of the public may address the town council concerning any item not on the council agenda. Speakers will be limited to 3 minutes unless otherwise specified by the mayor or presiding officer. The public will be given an opportunity to speak on each agenda item when that item is called. Is there anyone in the public that would like to speak to an item not on the agenda? Seeing none in person, is there any online?
We don't have any hands raised at this time, and we didn't receive any emailed public comment for open time.
Okay, so with that, I will close public comment and we will move to item number 3, which is presentations. Item 3A, the Marin Wildlife Prevention Authority update to council provided by Mark Brown. Adam?
Yeah, and I'd just like to say, first off, hello to Mark. Thanks for being here. I've had the pleasure of working with Mark over the last 6 or 8 months as part of the MWPA's operations committee. I'm just really impressed with the work that he does and staff does for MWPA. And so just excited to turn it over to you and share what's going on in Corte Madera with your work. So off for you to go ahead, Mark.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for having us here. Good evening, Mayor Lee, council members. I really do appreciate the opportunity to come to each of our council meetings because this is how we get our message out to our engaged community. We have to diversify how we're getting that message out. Not everyone sees a single stream of information. We call this what the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority is doing for you. And when you is an inclusive of the town of Corte Madera and the residents. And you know, I had the honor of working for the Marin County Fire Department for 30 years before I came here. And I really do take public service seriously. I think it's an honor to serve the public. And everyone that works at the MWPA carries that forward. I know Chief Martin and his staff carries that forward. Chief Martin and I have worked together a long time, long before he had the gray flocks of hair, but we're all getting there. But and while I'm talking about Chief Martin and his staff, Chief Martin being a chair of the advisory technical committee, Todd Lando being Todd Lando is amazing. And as we go through the presentation, you're going to see fingerprints from Chief Martin and Todd all over the place. So again, I think you guys all know this. It's 17 member agencies that are coming together as one because wildfire knows no jurisdictional boundaries. I really like the bottom right picture because that's showing 17 agencies coming into 5 zones. And the reason why 5 zones are important is that one size doesn't fit all. And so by having these 5 different zones and having a path forward for each of those zones allows us to tailor our work for that zone. What works for Novato has mostly newer construction, right? Probably more grass type fuel types, wider roads compared to Corte Madera. Very different. So that allows us to tailor our projects to the community that we're working in. Full community support might be an exaggeration, but was 70% approved. I think we're continuing to gain momentum. And then we recognize the role that climate change has in the fire environment. And not only do we feel that we're helping to create a safer fire environment, we help a lot. We think that a lot of our work is going to actually help with the climate change problem. And then everyone has a role to play. It's not just public agencies that need to take action. It's not just the fire agencies. We need to get our public to work together with us. And I think we've been successful in doing that. And I believe we've developed a comprehensive and long-range plan. We have determined 5 goal areas. When I go through the slide, I'm going to start in the middle because we follow what's called a house out approach. We have so much deferred maintenance. We can't get it all done at once. And so we have to start where the lives are. and we have to start where our infrastructure is. So that's why we're starting with the house out approach. And it starts with working with our residents for home hardening, defensible space. Our inspection program is the number one way that we get that public education out and help get residents to accept their responsibility. Next one is to the left is to improve our evacuation systems. Again, safety first. We want to be able to get the residents out safely, efficiently, quickly. We have been doing work along our evacuation routes to make them safer if they have fire impinging upon them. But we also want to improve our systems, get people out faster. We've been reducing wildfire fuels, both in our communities and around our communities. Educating the public is very important. We think that we get better compliance, we get better buy-in and participation if we educate the public rather than simply tell the public what to do. And we provide grants for our residents to get home hardening and defensible space work done. And we also have a low-income senior exemption. Here's an example of our house out approach and also our science-based approach. The picture on the left is what we call a parcel level risk assessment. We were able to take LiDAR data from 2019, apply different fire weather scenarios, apply the fuels, apply the homes, the demographics of our residents, and come up with a parcel level risk assessment. So we know where the most risk is that allows us to take action where that risk is. We are entering into our fourth year. It's a 10-year lifespan for this tax that we hope to renew. However, at the end of 10 years, and when we look back, I think we will see our defensible space evaluation program as our #1 success, because that's how we get the momentum of our communities through these inspections. And here's where I'm going to sing Todd Lando's praises. The inspection program that we are running throughout the entire MWPA came out of his head, working with others. And now we have a consortium of 14 of our 17 member agencies are all in the same group of inspectors. All of our member agencies are all using the same software. So jurisdiction wide, we had 33,000 and change inspections last year. Compliance isn't great. We know that. We know that we're not going to get to 100% compliance quickly. I actually need to change this slide for you. There you go. And but what I like is that 60% of the people who received an inspection took action. They may have not taken care of everything we asked them to do. That's unreasonable. 60% of people took action. And so if we can keep that type of momentum, fantastic. And since MWPA has been around, I think you're just over about 1,000 inspections total here in Corte Madera. I believe your fire council did receive a full end of year report on that. Our resident grant program been very successful. That number may actually be 400 grants awarded now. And that number 660,000 is no longer accurate. It's more like 700, closer to 800,000 in grant funds have been expended. But what I like is that 2-to-1 ratio of resident funding to MWPA funding. It's helped it get people engaged. So the work that's getting done out there is far more than what we're putting in. It's what people have been putting in as well. We want to work on a direct connection with our contractors. One of our guys is calling it the easy button. He just says, give the people the easy button to get the work done. And we're working on that. Direct assistance for those who may be property rich, money poor. And our grant program's weakness is it's a reimbursement program. Not everyone has the funds to expend to get the work done. So we want to be able to come in and do the work rather than them having to get reimbursed for their work. Here's where I think the residents can get an awesome return on their investment, and that's our Chipper Day program, and we've retuned it. Thank you. Keep kicking me if I do that. This is where we can get a huge return on investment, where residents can get a return on investment. On average, residents are paying about $200 a year. Chipper Day program will show up in each of our communities 5 weeks in the year. For the whole week, we'll be in a community 5 times through the year. If a resident has yard waste or debris that they've from doing their defensible space work, that could be $300 to $500 to have it removed. So if they use Chipper Days once, they get that return on investment. Last year, we had over 3,000 pickups. With this retuning and some other work that we're doing, I'm really hoping we get closer to 4,000 or 5,000 pickups throughout the entire area. Public education, nearly $1 million a year is going towards public education. Fire Safe Marin is our public education arm. recognized nationwide as the leaders when it comes to public education. And they are completely diversifying our information stream. I hope you've all been seeing tons of Emberstop advertisements all over the place, whether it's at bus stops, banners, online, you name it. May 20th at the Civic Center. Last year, we were hoping to get 500 to 1,000 people. We got 2,000 to 3,000 people. So this year, we're looking to double that number. And I will shout out to the residents of Marin. The vendors that were at Emberstop last year said it was the most informed community they've ever come to. So we just want to keep that momentum. And this is something that's, I think, comes home to everybody, and that's the evacuation route clearing. Same road and before and after pictures. And I know I heard Christmas Tree Hill mentioned earlier today, and that's just not the only road that's like that. And I know people, they get scared, right? Truly scared about what type of evacuation environment they may have to evacuate in. This is just a small example of what our work can look like. Evacuation risk assessment, we can't fix things unless we know what the problem is. And this is looking at every roadway in our jurisdiction. And that's identifying the fire threat on each roadway. It's looking at the road infrastructure itself. And it's looking at our demographics. Do we have people with access and functional needs? And where are our communication holes? If people can't get the message to evacuate, how are they going to evacuate? So this allows us to tailor the work that we're doing, and not just the MWPA, it could be community development agency, it could be public works, helps them tailor those evacuation routes to make them even safer. Everyone loves goats, so we have prescribed herbivory, as we call it. I always thought it was grazing, but apparently it's called prescribed herbivory. And so great program, but it gets a lot of work done. And what we're finding is it's actually helping to bring back the native vegetation through grazing. Another thing that came out of Todd Lando's head is the shaded fuel breaks, tremendous success. At one point about shaded fuel breaks is that we're not trying to stop the fire. We're trying to manipulate the fire behavior so it has less intense, lower rates of spread. It allows our residents to evacuate safer, gives them more time to evacuate, and it gives our firefighters a chance to get their work done. Greater Ross Valley shaded fuel break, which is 1 year into implementation. We had a 3-year pace. We're on pace, actually. We were able to complete phase 1 in year 1. And we were able to receive a $3.25 million grant from CAL FIRE to help fund that. And now we're moving that model into Nevada with a 60-mile shaded fuel break. Now here we got specific for Corte Madera as a projects. You have $87,000 going to an invasive vegetation treatment program to help residents get rid of invasive species on their property. A voluntary abatement program, and that is identifying the most dangerous, the riskiest structures, and helping those structures get the modifications they need. So we could basically say that's the structure that can burn down the rest of the community, and then we're going to work with that resident on that. And then the $174,000 for defensible space evaluations. And then, like I said, we break everything down into 5 zones. So this is for the central zone or the Ross Valley interchangeable. We have another $200,000 going towards our evacuation route project. That's with the last couple of years, we've been putting close to $300,000 each year towards that. Then adding additional funding to our defensible space program to get re-inspections, because we find we get the best in compliance when we come back to the residents and say, did you do your work? And then finally, $950,000 going towards the Greater Ross Valley shaded fuel break. And with that, I'll take questions and offer Chief Martin a chance to chime in.
Yeah, we do have Ruben's on the video here. So Ruben, I don't know if you want to say a few words.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Mayor Lee and members of the council. We really want to appreciate the support that Chief Brown has given us, and the work plans that we put out every year are very thought out, very, we really look for where the target hazards are within our jurisdiction, so we can then try to reduce the hazards that are there. A lot of the program work that's actually being done, as I've got to give credit to Todd Lando. He's the face of the organization when it comes to MWPA, and working with Chief Brown, has been a tremendous benefit to us as an organization. Knowing Chief Brown, and I say Chief Brown because he was my deputy fire chief when I worked for him at Marin County Fire Department. So him and I have been through these, seeing what the challenges are within communities that don't have defensive space or funding available to do any kind of the mitigation project. So I think for us as a county, we need to benefit and have benefited from the successes of MWPA.
Thanks, Chief. And I think it's a good time also just to hear from Mark and MWPA, just because I know the next step in our process or your process is really to get the budget approved for the 23-24 fiscal year. And so that I know that's working its way through them to MWPA board. I think that vote's coming up
Thursday at 3.
Okay, Thursday at 3. So as we speak, I think those numbers that you put up in the one table in terms of the local money being spent and on what programs that's relevant for the next fiscal year. And
That is correct.
Okay, so there you have it. I think we're open and Mark's open for questions from the council at this point.
Okay, who wants to go first?
Not a question so much, but just comment. I sit on the MWPA board representing Corte Madera. And I just want to thank Mark and your entire team. There's one part that I never thought about this, and that's the technology part. And when Mark mentioned before about looking at parcels on a risk basis, that's technology that's doing a lot of that work. And then the other piece also is in the beginning, I think with the shaded fuel breaks, a lot of people were afraid from an environmental standpoint that that was a clear cutting type situation. And it's not. Mark's team that actually bring in environmentalists as well as geologists to make sure that whatever needs to be protective, that's being protected. So they're just doing really a great job. And I agree. I think he's mentioned before where it's not to stop fires, but it's to mitigate the risk and give residents time to evacuate. So just again, it's a tremendous agency.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions?
I'll just add a comment, having watched and listened to the formation of this group, bringing together 17 jurisdictions and getting them to participate in a meeting, which was on Zoom because of COVID. It was masterful the way it came together. And I just really appreciate the fact that there is truly a countywide organization where there's all this cooperation and agreement. And I don't know how you did it, but keep it up.
Well,
Tell us how you.
the strength of the MWPA is the strength within our member agencies. We have a ton of talent. The Greater Ross Valley Shaded Fuel Break, I like to highlight that as the reason why the MWPA was built. 11 jurisdictions are impacted by that project. And from the time we approved the funding to scope, design, and go through the environmental compliance to the time that we actually started doing work was less than a year. So you tell me who can do 11 jurisdictions, bring them together and get going on a 38-mile project in less than a year.
Just it's a very impressive report, and I agree. It's amazing to get the cooperation. Maybe this person should run for, president or something.
Sure, Fred.
I'm sorry, just one more comment. Ruben, I want to thank you also on Central Maine Fire for all the work you guys are doing. And I think this is the first time I've seen you not in uniform.
Yeah, I'm currently in Washington, D.C. I came out for Mother's Day week to visit my wife and my grandson. So I'm very fortunate, but thank you very much.
It's fine.
Okay, I just wanted to, I'll just thank you, Mark and Chief and Todd and all of MWPA for your work. It's really impressive. And in addition to all the other comments made, I want to note that the fact that you guys are being so self-aware and self-critical and recognizing things like, hey, this grant program is awesome. It's helping people. How could we make it better? Maybe if it were like, instead of a reimbursement, if we were able to get them that aid up front. The fact that you guys are doing that is incredible and really shows the work and the drive that you and the team have to continually, take an incredible initiative and just keep making it better. So thank you. Really appreciate it.
Well, and that really is the staff of our member agencies driving us to be better.
Okay, so my question for you is the parcel level data that you did, is that available on the county GIS?
Absolutely. If you go to renmap.org and pull up the map, and then you go to local jurisdictions, and then has under local jurisdictions and districts, you'll see MWPA or wildfire prevention. Then you can click on the local prevention or the local risk assessment.
That's fantastic. Adam?
No, I'm happy to help get you there if anybody wants to actually see their parcel level data.
There's a second way that's a little bit easier probably, and that is Fire Safe Marin. If you go to Fire Safe Marin's website and Google or search Community Wildfire Protection Plan, and there's a story map that has that map in it. It's a little bit easier to find it that way.
Fantastic. Okay, so with that, we're gonna open it up to public comment. Is there anyone in the public that would like to take 3 minutes and speak to this item? Do we not do that usually? Is it right? Yeah. Anyone? No. Is there anyone online?
We don't have any hands raised or emailed public comment.
Okay, so I'll bring it back to the council. Is there any other final comments? Okay, full disclaimer, my art will be part of the Ember Stomp, as I did a whole system of watercolored drone firefighting systems, and one was selected. So I'm also very excited about that.
I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah. And then so everybody go to the Ember Stomp. It's gonna be a great festival.
Multi-talented mayor.
I'll see you then.
Yeah, exactly. And then also, I heard you have some bare walls, so if ultimately it's a place to hang out, I've heard, Ruben said that it would look nice on your.
We have a ton of bare walls right now.
No pressure.
It will look great on your wall, Mark.
Thanks, Ruben.
All right, so with that, we'll close item 3A. Thank you very much for your time and.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right. So now we'll move on to item number 4, which is the consent calendar. The purpose of the consent calendar is to group items together which are routine or have been discussed previously and do not require further discussion. They will be approved by a single motion. Any member of the town council, town staff, or public may request removal of an item for discussion. Is there anyone on the council who'd like to remove an item? Anyone with staff? Anyone with the public? Seeing none?
Mayor, we do have a hand raised from Roy Wolford.
Excellent.
Oh, oops. And Roy, you should be able to speak.
Good evening. The proclamation, gun violence, please withdraw it and rework it to make it factual and unbiased. And what is the source of the numbers written into that proclamation? You state every day 120 plus Americans are killed by gun violence. Do the math, and that covers about 43,800 killed annually. However, the truth of the matter is, according to the National Safety Council data for the year 2020, is that 24,292 firearm deaths were suicides. That's 55% of the alleged gun violent deaths were in fact suicides. Sadly, these deaths are likely due to mental and psychological issues. Why are you characterizing suicides as your evidence-based gun violence? The assaults, the murders, number approximately 19,500. Further, your proclamation fails to specify or specifically mention educational programs about appropriate firearm handling and safety. The NRA promotes firearm safety, but the ideologues demean those programs and efforts. The National Highway and Traffic Safety Administration data show for the year 2020, about 53,890 deaths from fatal crashes. The National Highway and Traffic Safety Administration, they publish this information, and I just wondering, why do you not have, or do we not have driver safety courses in schools for students and other safety programs for adults to reduce injury and death? Then why do you not mention firearm safety programs and education in your proclamation? The National Center for Health Statistics, and this is just kind of a lock in on numbers. So national drug involved overdose deaths for 2020 was about 92,000. For 2021, it was 107,000. It jumped to 107,000. So just compare those numbers to the actual murders, which was 19,500. So in sum, the proclamation is poorly thought out and written. Please rewrite it. There's lots of precedent tonight for withdrawals. Thank you.
We don't have any additional public comment.
Okay. Thank you for the comments. So seeing that, is there anyone that would like to respond to that, or would we like to make a motion?
I'm happy to move items 4A through 4G.
I'll second.
Councilmember Casissa.
Yes.
Councilmember Avazio.
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Beckman
Yes.
and Mayor Lee.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries.
Okay, so with that, that closes item number 4. We're moving on to item number 5, public hearing. Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 6, which is the business items. Item 6A is the discussion and possible approval of closure of Minky Park for outdoor concert series.
All right, good evening, Mayor Lee and council members. I'm going to lead this off for the team here and then hand it over to Tim to fill in the gaps, as well as Rebecca. Sort of a team effort here and sort of bringing this item forward, which was really born out of staff experience last year with Menke Park and sort of the request for closures that we got during the year. I think as I think the town council is well aware, for many years, we've assisted and facilitated the closure of Menke Park for summer concerts put on by the Corte Madera Community Foundation, and staff certainly anticipates to continue to do that this year and moving forward. However, we were faced with some additional requests last year by Zinn's Wine. I think it's called Zinn's Wine Bar, a private business. And then we had other requests sort of coming in also during the course of the year, which sort of raised some questions for staff about how best to handle those requests. And so I think what we're seeing is actually, it's actually a good thing in that we're getting requests for other entities to put on events to bring people together and have some opportunity for folks to enjoy Menke Park more frequently. So that's all a good thing, but it sort of caused some questions in our own mind about how best to handle those events. For example, we didn't have fee structures. We didn't know really how to, I mean, ultimately we decided it was appropriate for us to offer up the opportunity for closing the Menke Park on Saturdays for additional fall Saturdays for additional concerts. But it also may lead to additional requests going forward, who gets first come, first serve, you know, those sorts of questions. And we thought it would be great to move towards a little bit more formalized approach. We're a little bit later in the year this year in May. I think going forward, we're going to look to try to formalize maybe a summer concert schedule or a closure schedule, probably earlier in the years, starting next year. And I think it does two things. It does, one, I think it helps certainly on the staff side, know what's coming, help plan for it. But also on the applicant side and those sort of looking to participate, get all your ducks in a row earlier in the season, not have to really go through an application process, maybe weeks in advance of putting on an event, get your insurance squared away. We also have more streamlined pre-approved closure plans that we've been working on with the Public Works Department. RJ Suko has looked at that and set sort of out the fee schedule in advance so that everybody knows what that fees may be. And so just to be clear on that, what we've again not going to revisit the staff support that we have for the Community Foundation's Summer Concert Series or Oktoberfest being the other big event that happens at Menke, but looking to actually provide a fee schedule for private entities that wish to put on events at Menke Park. So I covered maybe a little bit more than the intro, but Tim, if you'd like to add, please go ahead, given you've a little bit more close to the experience last year than I was.
Sure, absolutely. So we do get quite a few more requests for large scale events. People love Oktoberfest. They want to duplicate it either at a private, or we currently have requests with the Southern Marine Mothers Club to do the exact same event. And it's like, there are a lot of steps to go into that. Oktoberfest plans pretty much probably 6 months out to a year out. And we realize that a special event like that by a private entity is going to take that long too. So as Adam kind of said, we're looking at to kind of schedule out a year to say, hey, if you want to have this event, knowing that the special event process probably takes 2 to 3 months to get approved, by the time it goes through all the departments, by the time Public Works looks at it, Fire looks at it for any type of issues with TENS, any type of street closures, to kind of put a good timeline and say, we don't want you to be rushed and kind of get all this stuff done, but of laying out what to expect for Menke for the entire summer and for the entire year. We understand it is the beautiful park, community loves it, but we also want to be cautious not to overbook it and to basically have it too busy where the people just can't come and choose the park as they'd like. So people are very passionate about these events. They love them, but it goes a lot of work and a lot of staff time to make sure that we are fully prepared for whatever might happen, and fully prepared to support whoever wants to run an event up there. And like Adam said, we definitely enjoy working with the Community Foundation for the concert series and working with Zins for their summer concert series, their fall concert series. But we're getting more and more of these. We just want to basically codify some stuff and have it ready to go for the next request we get. Just so we're, cautious and appreciative of working with people's time and spending staff time appropriately.
Yeah, and I mentioned this, but I will just emphasize a little bit more. One of the benefits of going through this process is not only having we've spent some times with Public Works, RJ and his team going through sort of what these 3 different levels of closures would look like. Full closure, sort of more limited closure, and just the park itself. And there are varying costs. So we're looking for, any feedback you have on that structure. In addition, we've also run this program through all the department heads as well. And so essentially have pre-approved the various different schemes with the various town departments. So it's going to be a streamlined approval process moving forward. And this is sort of developing over the next, developing. I think we'll improve this again as we go forward next year as well. So I think we're looking for, we call it a approval here, but an informal approval of the closures for this year. Just in terms of the quantity of approvals. And then any comments you have on sort of the approach with the fee structure for private entities moving forward, which is really just, basically accounting for staff time that is required to set up the closures and then break that down as well on a weekend day, which our maintenance team and Public Works would perform. So with that, I think we're open to any questions. And thank you for your time on this.
Okay, so we'll open up to the council for questions.
One question. So I totally support that the foundation event. Oh, wait, it's a question. Sorry, I always want to make comments. My question is, it seems to me that there might be 3 kind of classifications. One is the community foundation hosting events that are no charge to the public. And then there are events hosted by private entities that are also public events and are no charge to the public, such as the Zins event. And then somebody could want to throw a wedding and it's a private event by a private entity. And I think you maybe need 3. I don't want to complicate things, but it seems like there are 3 tiers. And then if you throw in the beautification committee, which is holding a public event, but also charging, I mean, I don't want to get too complicated, but I just think that a private wedding or private party by invitation is very different than what Zins is doing, which is kind of continuing on the good feeling of the summer events, but still opening it to the public with no charge. So I don't, it's complicated. It's just a question as to how.
So
I do it.
like the question to me is, are there, so is it always that the public, whether they're paying or not, would have access? They can't be a full private enterprise closed project like closing of the park?
Well, I mean, if you're having a wedding, you're probably going to want to close the park down completely. So
I know,
that would
but
be,
so are we allowing that?
that's the question. So if someone wanted to rent it, like for a private event, they would close the park down.
I
Yes.
think it's not frequent. We did have one last year, I
Correct.
believe, and did they, I mean, there's not
There was a-
fencing up or anything like that.
Right,
I
but
think
they closed the
it's reserved.
parking and like in the
Correct.
flow through of the
Correct.
road.
Just for safety of so many people in the park and the parking stalls, it's much safer to close the street down completely.
Okay, so we have entertained these in the past.
Not very many, but we have it to entertain some. Yes. If someone wanted to have their wedding there and then the reception somewhere else, they could have their wedding there. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to interlope.
No, that was helpful.
Did you have any other questions? Okay, anyone else? President?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify something that Councilmember Ravazio asked about events that there is no charge to enter. But for example, with the Zins events, there's no charge to enter, but is something being sold there?
Yes, he sets up a wine tent and he sells his beverages.
Okay, so it's okay, just realize that. So generally that is a commercial event. Private commercial event. Okay, and can you give me, so there's the partial closures and the full closures, but can you give me an example of what kinds of events would be that, or is it just what the person requests, or do we make the determination whether it's a full or partial closer?
So we work with the person who's making the request. The community foundation concerts are a full closure because people are dancing in the parking stalls and there's obviously a safety issue of that many people in the park. Zins is a partial closure, just the few stalls right in front of the pavilion there. So they have people to park, and then the actual parking behind it is open. So those are the two differences, either full closure where you can't drive in at a certain point, there's barricades, you can walk in, but obviously at some point the parking lot's closed off. The other one, the parking lot is left open on the side where they have a much smaller crowd. I've heard the summer concert series can draw 400 or 500 people, sometimes even larger. And the Zins was a much smaller event, maybe 100, 150 people. So a much smaller event where they could leave part of the parking lot open. But the concert series on a popular band could draw 6. I mean, it depends. How it's a nice day and it's a good concert, people will come out. They definitely enjoy it. The outdoor concerts in summer.
Right.
And just, I think we're going to propose to offer basically a menu of options, 3 options. And so we haven't put parameters on whether or not somebody could close down. All the summer concert series for the community foundation are full closure of the street and that parking area. And I think the Zins at this point had said that they would like to close down perhaps up to 2 times, 2 to 3 times of, I think maybe there's how many total events that is proposed for Zins?
I'm not sure that he has said yet, but I think up to 6.
Okay, around 6. It was through like the end of October, from I think September to October.
Correct.
Okay, and one more question. So when that application is made and all the parties, the police and the fire and whomever is involved in making that decision has to review it.
Yep.
Do they decide what the event will be? Like, someone might say, I only want to, foot the cost for partial closure, but it's looked at and they go, you know what? No, you need a full closure for that.
I think it depends what the event is. So they'll come to us with the pie in the sky. I'd like to do all these things. And it may say, hey, if you really want to do this, it'll be a full closure. Or if you want to scale back and not have certain events, we could probably do a partial closure. A lot of times they'll ask for more and then kind of vet it through. That's why it takes so long to have everyone look at it. And then we kind of vet our concerns. And then, there's a lot of back and forth with the person who's asked for the application to make it work or things we can produce. So there's definitely a constant flow of communication back and forth to figure out what works for this and what is not appropriate for the park. And then what can they still succeed and make the event a success.
Thank you.
Just one simple question. I think the answer is yes, but just want to confirm. An entire series of planned events can be permitted under one permit, correct?
Correct.
Great, thank you.
Here's have a couple. Did this go before Park and Rec Commission for any type of discussion before it came to us?
It has not, no.
Was there any reason why it didn't go to them?
It was on the work plan to bring to council of kind of coordinating a schedule of events for Menke Park of closures. In the work plan that we'd worked for this year.
Ultimately, we're giving direction on this one, right? And we're approving only the concert series for the summer.
But that's what I'm confused about, because it says recommended action is what you just said. But then when you go down below on page 3 at the bottom, it says staff requests that council review the current practice of in-kind support for the community foundation and confirm support for continuous practices. And they're also requesting that we review the associated fee and proposal for events sponsored by it. So are we just providing direction? Well, I guess what are you looking for us to do? Because it's kind of like mixed messages, at least to me it is.
I think really we're just looking for an informal approval of the series of closures this year. Again, because it's tacking on essentially the Zins closures for this year. We're also looking for any comments on the charging of the fees that essentially we're proposing to do for the private entities versus the community foundation. So that's it. Those are 2 things.
Okay, so what is the fee for Zins then? Because if I have this right, which I totally support the community foundation, we're not charging them anything. It's more of an in-kind,
Yes.
I don't want to say donation, but it's in-kind support, right? What would we be charging Zins Wine Bar if they want to do their summer concert series?
So they would charge the application fee for the special permit.
Mhm.
We would charge them the hourly rate for Menke Park. And then if they did any type of closure, full closure, there would be a charge from Public Works to close those areas for them. But right now, if they're just using the half closure and not closing any streets, there wouldn't be any charge from Public Works to them. It's just the fees for the use of the park, the special permit, and then security deposit in case something happens.
Okay, and in Public Works, it's, again, I'm just going back to Zins. If they wanted to, the town would provide the A-frames for them to put up to block off the streets, correct?
We would provide the A-frames to block off a few parking spots in front, not to block off the street altogether. That would be a full closure, and we would have our staff do that if it was a full closure.
Okay, and this only covers the summer concert series, right? Because something that Pat brought up. So for the beautification committee, if they do Oktoberfest, which is in October, this is outside that scope.
Is outside the scope, but it would still be the same fees they would charge, which we are not charging, but it's just the same in-kind services that we're doing for that event.
Okay,
It's just not concerts.
okay, so there's no consideration given nonprofit versus for-profit. In other words, community foundation and beautification committee would be nonprofits.
Correct.
Zins is obviously for-profit.
Correct. And that's why we're charging the hourly rate for the park and then any type of fees associated with.
All right, thanks.
Tim, can I add on to,
Absolutely.
Mary Lee, can I add on to this response? I just wanted to add, since there was some confusion about what the Parks and Rec Commission could be discussing, we could also entertain direction to staff at this time for anything you would like us to bring back to the Parks and Rec Commission for discussion. For example, this fee, when Parks and Rec has their annual fee schedule discussion, this will be rolled into that. And when we have that discussion, we could also discuss additional things, like if council directs the commission to look at the possibility of capping the number of either events in that space that involve a full closure or a partial closure, or anything else that might impact the neighborhoods. If you want to set limits on something like that, or the number of times that space could be rented, we could also look at that time too. Or any number of things that we can look at in conjunction with permitting for these types of events.
So Adam, my question to you then is, the reason that it's come to the council is this is new policy, right? This is not a review of a fee schedule that's already been established. And so therefore,
I think we want support from the council that our approach to the closures and sort of how we're approaching that. We would like some support from the council on that, because our experience last year was sort of, we were making it up as we went. And so this provides a little bit of, whether you call it policy or informal direction, it doesn't have to, we can adapt policy internally as we move forward. But I think it's helpful for us to have this, and maybe we do come back on a yearly basis with sort of the schedule of events for Mankey Park in particular, because it is closing the street down, you know, a certain number of times a year. That can have impacts and certainly to the residents around there. And at some point we'll bring back any feedback we do get on that, obviously to the next time we sort of bring it before the council. But yes, it's really seeking your support for this proposed schedule of events this year.
Right, and then you'll be able to do cost capture based on our approval from this, which, so it's also a financial decision for the city or town.
Yeah.
That the council's making as a policy.
Yeah, I think that other decision about the private entity charges versus the, you know, and again, Councilmember Ravazio, I think that's a good point. We can think about that some more, but yes, it's that breakdown between supporting obviously our nonprofit institutions and local community organizations versus an entity like Zins, and how we're proposing to break that down, getting some acknowledgement and support there, just to move forward, that is the way we should be doing this. So.
Yeah, please.
So I think it would be great to hear from the Parks and Rec Commission about that question, because in some ways it's true that Zins is a private entity. But like I said, on the other hand, they're creating events that are open and free to the public to attend. And then going all the way to a private wedding where they want to close down the street because they want to have a private group there. You know, where on that spectrum do we want to be, and do we want to close it off? And if we do a private wedding, do we want to charge as much as we possibly can to make up for all the costs that we're spending on our community events? I mean, it seems to me that if we are going to allow private events that aren't open to the public, those should not be done lightly and freely. They should have some substantial costs involved. And maybe Parks and Rec can noodle that and figure it out.
Well, that's my other question. So is this just for Minky? Because ultimately, if you want to do a wedding in any of our parks, you could probably get a permit. So why, like, let's we're distinguishing that Minky Park is a larger public entity that has thoroughfares and more stakeholders. And so therefore it's a policy and political decision about whether we approve those permits versus other parks that basically don't have the same consequences from the approval process. Is that what we're getting at, or the fear of staff?
I think it's really gets down to the staff time and involvement with the actual expansion of Mankey Park out into the parking lot and closing down that street. And that's a little bit different of a event than I think that occurs in other.
So it sounds like
the park.
So then what I would ask is that's only one of the many conditions that could happen there. So there's only one condition that would have a great enough impact that should be considered.
Well, I think to Council Members Ravazio's point, is pointing out a different sort of interesting question, I think, which is even if it's self-contained within Mankey Park and not expanding out, but it's privatizing that space to the exclusion of others for a certain period of time, does that actually have a different fee structure for that type of event? And so I think that's a separate question that we're not really embedded in what we're talking about here today, but I certainly think that's an interesting question, and that could happen, essentially at potentially some other parks. Although we just haven't had the.
Could we discuss it as council during the deliberation about the interest in that? Because I think.
Well, sure, in direction in terms of how to proceed on that, and I guess it's just hasn't come up, I think, to the same extent at other town parks, put it that way, or other facilities.
No, there's not another setting where someone would want to rent out the Cove for a wedding and a baseball. Not, I mean, maybe, who knows, but it hasn't come up in other.
Yeah, I only bring it up because I know that we've talked about equity and availability at other park locations for private events. And so therefore, it is a mediated kind of discussion that we should have as a council to then give direction about how best to address it, I think.
Okay.
Do you have more questions?
Well, just one thing I'll throw in here. So when when you're using the term schedule, now we're just talking about the fee schedule. Is that right? Or you're saying that we're looking at the schedule?
Well, the summer concert closures and the Zins closures as well.
Okay, that's all that is scheduled now, but are other things being scheduled?
There are other applications out right now, but that's all that is scheduled and been approved so far, correct?
Okay, and so those folks who have applications in now, what are their fees? I mean, or do they have fees?
So they have fees. So the one that was a private event for kind of a copy of Oktoberfest. Their fees are going to be the same thing. It's going to be an hourly rental. It's going to be the street closure. It's going to be anything special that they're going to produce that there were extra fees for either staff time to be there or any other requirements they're going to have. Those fees will be added on. Most of our fees are already in the Park and Rec master fee schedule, but obviously if we change anything or add anything, it'll be added to the next year's schedule. So I'll come back with that as a revision or a recommendation. We redo our fee schedule.
Okay, so whatever we decide now, that's going to be for next year.
Correct.
Okay. Also, I see that, and this is just sort of something, I don't know if we want to say this for discussion time, but that I'm wondering about is the non-charged fees for Corte Madera entities, you know, public entity, the beautification committee, the community foundation.
Okay.
How are we going to treat other nonprofits? So that's just something to.
Yeah, the direction would be great because we haven't had that yet. But I can imagine if somebody in their product wanted to have a huge event, we would probably have to figure out what fees would be associated with that because they're just treated differently.
Yes.
Right.
I'm sorry, along that point, if you don't mind, one point clarification, when we're talking nonprofits, we're talking Corte Madera nonprofits, correct?
Correct.
So we're not talking profits with outside the town limits.
That's how we've treated it in the past.
Yeah, I just want to clarify that point.
Just one more question, if I may. The group that wants to put on a just like Oktoberfest, are they calling it Oktoberfest?
No, they are not.
So it'll be, and it will be the same time of year or?
I think the request is for July.
Okay.
It's Southern Maroon Mothers Club wants to do kind of a
Festival.
large festival gathering. Sure. I don't know what the official title is, but yes.
I just want to make sure they weren't stealing.
They are not.
Great.
No, your date's good. Don't worry. It's locked in.
Okay, so is there any other questions on council? Seeing none, we'll open it up for comments or from the public. If anyone in the public has any comments, you have 3 minutes. You can stand to the podium and speak to the agenda item. Anyone? Seeing none in the public, is there anyone online or do we have any written comment?
We have 2 attendees, no hands raised and no emailed public comment.
Okay, so we'll close public comment and bring it back to the council for deliberation. I think one, we should determine whether we're comfortable approving the fee schedule and the current approved or approve the permits for the summer. And then I think we should discuss about what types of direction we'd like to give staff to help them move this forward for the next coming years. Is that correct? Would that be a good?
Staff will ultimately be responsible for approving the permits, but in terms of just the summer concert series closures, yeah, that would be good.
Okay, all right. So who wants to start us off? Eli.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So to answer the question number 1 on approval of the park closures for these 2 concert series events and the proposed fee schedule there, I think that's great. Happy to support staff on that. With regards to the policy question, definitely agree with Pat's comments that I think that there's maybe a larger discussion to be had to just kind of flesh out more fully, like the different permutations. Is it like is it a public free event, a for-profit free event, or like a for-profit private event that like no one can go to? So I think I agree with that. And then I also agree with Fred's comment that maybe that's something that might make sense to start with the Parks and Rec Commission and let them kind of figure out some of those details. So definitely want to agree with those. I think in general, this looks good to me. I'm glad that this fee schedule that we're looking at tonight is going to be rolled into the Parks and Rec fee schedule. I think that makes sense. One thing that I'll just mention, maybe this is a bad idea for a reason that's not occurring to me, but just for the sake of perhaps like simplicity and procedure, one alternative that we could consider rather than saying, here's like a list of groups or types of e-groups that, types of groups that we don't charge. Maybe we say we're going to charge every event, every group the same thing. And then maybe the council comes in like once a year or something and says, hey, we'd like to create a fund and like reimburse the community foundation for the permitting fees that they paid for like the summer concert series or something. So I don't know if that's a better or a worse way of handling it, but I wanted to just kind of put it out there as an alternative in case it's helpful. So that is all. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm okay with the concert series part of it. I think especially the Community Foundation does a great job with those concerts, and it's a big draw. I'm okay with the fees for this part of it. I still think it still needs to go to Parking Commission, Rec Commission for them to have a discussion. And I almost wish that they'd had this discussion before it came to us. I think it would have benefited us and also them because they do a great job. One thing on the for-profit private, another way to look at this is that we just don't permit them at all. It's food for thought. It's just food for thought. It's a lot cleaner. It's easier to deal with. And this way we don't even have to worry about them. And basically what we're looking at is just community type events that would be held there. And the other thing is I agree with Rebecca. I think that we should look at the Park and Rec Commission, have them look at the number of times that park can be closed. Because if during the summer, if that's closed every single weekend, Saturdays and Sundays, the neighbors are going to go crazy over there, and I don't blame them. And one thing to Eli's point, maybe instead of having it come back to council, you may want to think about budgeting a dollar amount for in-kind and having a line item. This way we know what it's kind of capped at. And I would leave it up to staff to make it equitable and fair to all the community groups. So it's not just a large percentage is going to one or the other one, but that in-kind is being spread around. But I think if you do it that way, this way you can actually track it. Those are my comments.
I would just say that because the Corte Madera Community Foundation was really the initiator of using Menke Park in this way, I would like to see those in-kind services being continued to be offered without charging them first and then having to make them submit for reimbursement, only because I know what a thin margin the Community Foundation runs on. There just isn't that kind of money. So I really hope that we will continue to support the Community Foundation in as much as we can, especially since our own Parks and Rec survey showed that those kind of events were right up there with a swimming pool. People really want to see more community culture, community events and music. So I really hope we don't make it harder for the foundation to put these events on.
First, I'll just say that I trust the staff to figure out the specifics, but I'll just throw in that some of the fees seem kind of low. I don't know when they were first established, but I'm just throwing out there that as you review this to consider if it lines up with your administrative time. And I think as simplified as possible, fee schedules can be, and as few as possible. I would think in my mind, one for entities that are part of the town, and then another for entities that are not. And I just think that we have to be realistic about cost. And but I trust you all. You guys know that better than I do. So I'm just saying I support that approach. And let's see if I have anything else. I would also say, because of staff administratively, to sort of impose certain deadlines for, when you can ask, for, there has to be a cutoff point, a lead time that's given. And also if events are canceled, there should be cancellation fee within a certain time, because I think, organizations can have a possibility of being a bit ambitious, and then they find out they can't quite get it done. And so to help sort of move that process along, having that standing out there in front of them as certain deadlines, I think is always a good thing. And it saves the staff time without, so they don't have to do all the work and then not be compensated because of cancellation. And I think that's all I have.
Okay, so forgive me, does one of the reviewers, is it the police department?
Yes.
Okay, and will they determine whether they need a police presence there or can allow like private security, or ultimately like, is that distinguished, especially if there's drinking involved?
That's up to the police department, correct? I will basically submit what they're planning and how many people are planning on attending, and they make that recommendation, either
Okay.
private security or police.
Right, and there's a compensation line item
Correct.
involved with that. Okay. That was part of it. The other thing is just from a policy standpoint, what I'm also hearing is there's really a sliding scale. It's like, the more community facing, the more open and engaging it is and beneficial to the community, whether it's a paid event or not. It can generate taxes or bring in tourism or whatever. That compensation can happen other than direct fees, right? So there's that, and we've also heard in the Parks and Rec kind of master plan, very much we want, and the community wants to see that supported, right? But on the other hand, we're talking about, someone that just has $1 billion and wants to hang a hammock in the park and gets it for the day, right? Like, how much are we really going to charge on that, right? Like, yeah, right. Like, have them rebuild the whole park is basically like, and that day it's worth giving up the park for a day to have the money in the coffers to make better Parks and Rec, right? Like, so that's what I really hear and think that is best in the community dialogue. And I think that that's why I'm also hearing the council wanting it to go to the Parks and Rec, is because that committee's structured well to take public comment on that in a more workshop scenario, to then bring back a staff formulated and more cohesive kind of approach to all these topics that we brought up. So I think that that's all I have to say about that. And are you looking for a motion and an actual approval, or do you feel like, can we just, is there some kind of acknowledgement that we need to make to?
I think that we would like, I'm looking at Amy, but we would like a motion that at least acknowledges the closure of the Menke Park for the summer concert series, both the foundation and then the Zins concert, which would go through, I think, the end of October. And support of the at least the fee structure as presented here, with I guess the acknowledgement, and I think that was very well said, merely of, it sounds like we have more work to do on noodling the actual fee structure, thinking through the different scenarios that actually may come before us in terms of requests for special events, but do that with the Park and Rec Commission.
Yeah. Sorry, I actually had a question before. So in the Parks and Rec master plan, but also discussions that are happening about the kind of modifications and updates to Menke Park for all these events, is there new infrastructure like removable bollards versus like those type of things that will help? Or is there a way that we can basically create a fee schedule that can actually support more of these events in a really healthy way? And so
That's a great question. Yeah, that's something that's been discussed as part of the park master plan, and we'll come back, I think, at some point before.
Yeah, in phases 3 and 4 of the master plan, they're going to come back with ideas and suggestions how to make it much easier to close it on a regular basis for these events. So you don't have to have public or staff to go out and put all the A-frames. Removable bollards are much easier than having to bring out the A-frames every time, put them up, take them down. So it is part of that discussion. Yes.
right. So as you think of the permits and all the cost involved, if you also think about the way that we can create better facilities for all of these events, I think that those two could be considered in tandem. So
I'm happy to move the full or partial closure of Menke Park for the 2 permitted summer concert series and approve in concept the fee schedule as proposed tonight.
I'll second it.
call for a vote.
Could we just have a little discussion on that? We're not actually closing Menke Park. You're actually just closing Montecito Avenue for 1 block from First Street to Tamalpais. So when you say we're authorizing the closure of Menke Park, we're actually authorizing the opening of Menke Park to the whole community by closing off this street. So just if we can be more specific in the language, we're closing off Montecito Drive from Tamalpais to First Street.
Yeah, it's attachment 1 has the diagram of that.
Okay, thank you.
So, yeah, so what I'm hearing you say is it's not really a park closure, it's a road closure for a
road closure
park
to accommodate the
event,
park event.
an open park
Right,
event.
it's a road closure,
I,
right.
I appreciate the semantics of that.
But
and
the
I'd
parking is
encourage
still
you to-
open, right? The parking, we still leave the parking.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right, so we had a second, and have we done the call? Oh,
I think we had a friendly amendment to the motion, so
Accepted.
Thank you.
Councilmember Casissa.
Yes.
Councilmember Avazio.
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Beckman.
Yes.
Mayor Lee.
yes.
Thank you. The amended motion
Thank you.
carries.
All right, so moving on to item 6B, this is the discussion and possible adoption of resolution number 28, 2023, authorizing the town manager to enter into an agreement with Soma Aquatics Foundation to provide a summer and Saturday community swim program at Redwood High School for town residents for an amount not to exceed $50,000. Adam.
Thank you, Mayor Lee, council members. I actually have some slides on my screen if that's possible, but I'm not in the meeting. That's okay. All right. It's okay. It's all in the staff report. But by way of background, so this is an item that came before me in I will just say I'm going to give the presentation here today. I'm also have Jeremy Engman from Soma Aquatics here who can speak. I'm going to actually give a little bit of time, if I may, Mayor, to Soma Aquatics at the end of my presentation, a few minutes just to introduce their organization as well. And Jeremy's here as well to answer any questions from the council. This came across, this is something that was new to me, came across my desk in February of this year. Essentially, I was introduced to Jeremy and Soma Aquatics and sort of the program that was run through, facilitated by the town last year. And then sort of over the next couple of months, Jeremy and I had some conversations, also spoke to the TAM Union School District and representatives, and sort of tried to get a better understanding of exactly what this program was about that we had funded last year and how it evolved over the course of the years. And then through some refinement, we have come to a proposal that I'm actually really pleased to be able to present to you tonight as a potential program for swimming and for swim classes and rec and lap swim. And I can get into more details about that. It's an attachment, I think, 1 of your staff report or 2 of your staff report, the full program, but is an opportunity really to address some of the programming that I think was described in the park master plan and aligns well with, I think, some of the especially Soma Aquatics' program aligns well with the mission of emphasizing access for lower income and underserved youth and families, with the town's goals to provide equitable access to town programs and amenities. And so I think also what is being described here tonight is a potential program offering swimming again for youth and seniors that also aligns well with the town's commitment to use Measure F funding, sales tax funding for such purposes. So the program, and I'd like to point your attention to, why don't you if you can pull up the staff report. I think that will be better to go through attachment 1. sorry, attachment 2. So after discussions with Jeremy and the Tam High Union School District, one of the things I was trying to do was reduce some of the costs from last year's program. And so that's where ultimately the funding that is being requested tonight for myself to enter into an agreement with Soma Aquatics is for not to exceed amount of $50,000. That would provide the swim program run by Soma Aquatics that you see in front of you on this attachment 2 or on the screen in front of you here. That includes several weeks, I think 7 total weeks of recreation and lap swimming supervised by lifeguards at the Redwood High School pool, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Monday through Thursday. It would also have 2 professionally led deep water aerobics classes per week, really geared towards senior populations in Corte Madera, and would also allow for private and group swim lessons. I think importantly, the other part of this program would be a Saturday program that would be 12:30 to 3 p.m. and would be offered for 20 weeks and would allow for free swim lessons for youth from low-income qualified families. I'll let Jeremy and Soma speak to how exactly those families would be qualified under that program. But that's, I think, a really exciting opportunity for us to offer swim lessons and free swim lessons as a life skill. I think that's one of the things that really attracted me to Soma Aquatics, was that the real core mission of being there to provide swim lessons as a life skill for underserved populations that would otherwise not have access to a swimming pool. And so bringing that to the Corte Madera community, I thought was a really, I know this was offered last year, but it was, my perspective, really a great opportunity to do something new and exciting here in Corte Madera. I think one of the ways that we have talked already, and Tim's here to talk about this too as well, but one of the ways we've already talked about taking full advantage of that opportunity was to build this swim program into Camp Corte Madera and sort of the offerings that we already have great activities there at Camp Corte Madera, but this would provide an opportunity at least once a week for the kids who participate in that to go and swim for the day over at the Redwood High School pool. In addition, I think there's, as the council knows, the town's funded a scholarship program for income qualified children as well already at Camp Corte Madera. So there's a population as well that really is ready-made to sort of take advantage of these free swim lessons on the weekends, on Saturdays. And in addition, I think we've already talked about other opportunities and other families and communities we could reach out to in Corte Madera that are in low-income housing and other areas of Corte Madera that are known to our planning staff, frankly, through our outreach of our housing element. I think that's a big part of this as well. And so those are some of the things we've put together. I think started to one of the key differences, I think, from last year as well, is that we've already included some of the advertising at an early stage in the summer activity guide for our, that's already in the back page of our summer activity program. So I think you could speak to how much interest you've gotten as a result of that. I know Soma Aquatics has also started to advertise on their own website, which we could pull up as well if interested. And in addition, I think we're poised to put some new flyers. I know Jeremy's developed some additional flyers that we would, if authorized tonight, we would start to immediately put out on our newsletters and elsewhere in town for our community to participate in. One of the key things, obviously, through this program is key things to mention. This would be free for Corte Madera residents. There would be a charge of $10 for adult non-residents and youth non-residents. Part of that money, if that's could be come back to the town in terms of a 50-50 split with SOMA, or that could be just to extend the program a little bit longer in the summer or in the fall. But there's some resources coming back to the town for that. And, in all, to be perfectly honest about this, it's hard to gauge exactly the level of interest that at this point in time in this program. But I think one of the key things that I'd like to do, and working with, we've already started discussing exactly what information we would gather from residents or participants in this program over the course of this summer and into the fall. Questions such as obviously just the basic ones of residency, the age of the participants. I also think it's really critical that we get information about what brought you to use this facility, what specific programming you're here to participate in. And certainly I think a questionnaire or a survey towards the end of the program, just asking what else, was this successful? What was your experience like? What could be done better in order to improve this? So I view this really as a pilot program in essence for this year, trying to gain information through the process. Obviously, providing a means of pool access for our community, which we know is scored very highly on the recent surveys in 2021 as part of the master plan process, but also really to see if this is something that our community takes advantage of and utilizes, and then come back and report on that and see if this is something that we want to continue in the future. So I will turn it over to Jeremy, and you may have another member of your organization here as well. Sorry, we haven't met, but if you want to have about 3 minutes, maybe just to introduce your organization, your mission, and yourselves, and that might be helpful for questions in the future about, I want the council to be able to ask SOMA as well, any questions you have about specific budgeting or the organization itself and the service they provide. So if you can't step to the podium, please, yeah.
With the microphone. How's everybody doing? This is a new process for me, so forgive me if I am not 100% comfortable in myself, but thank you so much for having us here, Mayor, council members, and everyone else. SOMA really in essence is a program that is designed to create access to pool facilities. More importantly, to make sure that the people that are accessing the pool facilities know how to swim, so that everything that we have all around us, which is so unbelievably beautiful, isn't going to be a reason for us not continuing to be here as a member of our communities. Especially here in the Bay Area, we have so much water surrounding us. Our kids, mine in particular as well, find themselves always playing by the side of the water, and the fact of them not having the confidence or the knowledge to know how to save themselves if they were to fall in the water as such a simple thing has always been a concern to me. And realistically, in the majority of communities, a lot of people that don't have access to pool facilities, or more importantly, access to swim programs, don't have that same confidence and knowledge to be safe around the pool. So while this program and this organization, I should say, focuses on that, at the end of the day, this is also about providing everybody that has received that education at a younger age access to pools, because the more access we have to water and a safe environment to explore swimming, we become more confident swimmers and we become more safe swimmers. So as Murad here has said many times, and I like to repeat, learning how to read should not be the only basic life skill. And I'm not saying this as well as he has, but knowing how to swim as well is just as important of a life skill. And once we move past that water safety, we move into all the other realms of why this sport is so healthy for us as adults as well, moving away just from our kids. So it's great to just be able to be here and talk about this program, but more importantly, have a community that is putting this type of programming at the forefront, not only as something that's important for the youth in the community, but also as something that's important to the adults and all the families that are in the community as well. So thank you so much for having us here, and I'm definitely open to any questions or comments or anything along those lines.
Could you just introduce who you're here with today?
Oh, I apologize. Yeah, this is Murad Zaraparvar. He's the head coach for Seals Aquatics down in Mill Valley. They have a recreational swim team as well as USA team, and he's also vice president of the board of Soma Aquatics.
Great, thanks for that. And with that, I think we're just open and available for questions from the council.
All right. Any questions from the council?
I just have a couple. I'll ask you guys first, if you don't mind. It looks like there's free swim lessons, it says, for income qualified families. Those are residents and also non-residents of Corte Madera?
At the moment, yes.
Okay.
So I'd say we target to residents of Corte Madera, but up until this point, regardless of what facility we're at, we make an effort to not turn anyone away that doesn't know how to swim and is looking to be water safe.
And I think that's great, by the way.
Our mission is access. So we don't want to limit that as much as possible.
Yeah, no, I just think it's great that it's expanded out just for, yeah, I think it's great. If I go to, is there an age limit for kids? In other words, do you have to be older than 15 years old to use the pool if you come by yourself? What age do you have to be accompanied by a parent, I want to say?
Yeah, that's a good question. This was something that came up last year, and at the moment, we've said that you need to be 18 or older to be there, or you have to have a parent that's supervising you on the pool deck. So the parent does not, or the adult does not need to be in the water with them, but we do need to have permission from that adult and have an adult on the pool deck representing anybody that's under the age 18.
Okay, so it's not like parents can drop kids off and come back like 3 hours later and pick them up.
I haven't found a way to pull that off yet. You know, if we can find a way to make it safe, possibly, but at the moment we haven't done that.
Have you had, I know some pools have an issue trying to get lifeguards. The summer I know is very easy because you get a lot of kids coming home from college, but then after like August, I've heard that's much more difficult to get lifeguards. Do you guys have that issue?
I mean, I'd say finding lifeguards has been an issue, not just in Marin, but I personally live in Petaluma and Sonoma County, and I'd say all over the Bay Area, it's been an issue trying to find lifeguards, especially since everything with COVID. I myself am an instructor with American Red Cross for lifeguarding as well as other classes. So we work with a healthy amount of volunteers within the program as well as paid staff. And so we do offer those opportunities to our volunteers to become paid staff as well. And we have training that is set up for them. So for example, this year as well, assuming this is something that we all decide to move forward with, if anyone steps out there on the first couple of days, you will see new people who are either recertifying their lifeguard training or new people that are wanting to become lifeguards as well.
Okay, thanks. And then a couple quick questions for staff. Is there any liability to the town on any aspect of this? Or, no offense, or do they assume all the liability from a legal standpoint, an insurance standpoint? And is that, go ahead, I'm
Well,
sorry.
yeah, no, I think certainly they will have insurance and liability, and they're renting the facility from the school district. So the town is not directly involved in that. I don't know if you, Amy, I mean, we're still, again, as noted, the agreement is to, the action is to authorize the town the town manager to enter into an agreement. So we'll definitely have conversations about that moving forward, but I don't know if you have anything to add. I mean,
The termination of liability is
Broad.
a broad and fact-specific determination. The town will take all efforts to prevent liability, and I'm sure the program and the district as well are very concerned with safety and will do the same.
If I may,
That was a great response.
the district requires us to carry a certain level of insurance based on their experience. So our level of insurance is based off what the district determines we should do. And they have a lot of experience with pole use, what the minimum levels of insurance should be.
Okay, thanks. And then from a budget standpoint, is that 50K coming out of this year's budget, or will it be budgeted through the budget process for 23-24?
Yes, it's in the budgeted, it's in the, you'll see it in the proposed budget for 23-24.
Okay, and then do you have any metrics from last year, the last couple of years? And I know it may be apples to oranges, but.
Yeah, I don't know if Jeremy, you want
Yeah,
to
I can
speak to
a little
that?
bit to it. I think more importantly, after kind of continued conversations that we've had, is we want to kind of refine some of the metrics even more to figure out, I mean, obviously more data, the better, especially when we're working with different communities and we're trying to target different members of those communities. A snapshot of last year is we had 175 visits from adult residents, 226 visits from youth residents. We had an additional 151 visits for people on Tuesdays, which last year was a day that was free to community members. The pivot from that this year has been to try to lower any possible blockade that could be there for anyone in the community to want access. So last year, where we had Tuesdays as a free access point for anybody this summer, the proposal is that that would be free to anybody within the community, whether it be adult or kids or adults with kids coming to use the facility. For non-residents adults, there were 41 visits, and non-resident youth were 10 visits. The only part that doesn't take into account is the free lesson program metrics, which started a little late last year, to be honest. I can talk a little bit to it, but realistically, with a little bit more kind of lead time, it gives us more possibility to reach out to people. So we're in the dozens for the free swim program, but still less than probably 20 individual youth that were participating.
A key point here is we took this program over from Rim Pirates Foundation. The founder of that had gone through some health issues and didn't have the time to do the administration required to get the program started last summer. So he reached out to us to see if we would like to help facilitate it for Corte Madera. We only had 3 weeks to ramp up last year. So the promotion was pretty much promotion came after we started. We believe this year, with the long lead time, we've been promoting it more. The town has included us in the booklet. We believe we'll have a significant increase in visits if the program is allowed to continue because of the improved and earlier promotion of the program.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
Okay. Jeremy, good to meet you. Murad, good to see you again. Just wanted to clarify my understanding of the schedule here. So this flyer says 11 to 3 Monday through Thursday, and then the flyer that we've got at the end of our staff report here, which looks like that. That one says looks like Monday through Friday, 11 to 2:30 more. So are those like different programs or?
So originally, a couple things to keep in mind. First of all, last year we still had the pool the same amount of time. We had it until 3 o'clock, but if anybody ever goes to the pool, either with your kids or just for lap swimming, there is a period of time once you get out of the pool to actually exit the facility. So we ended up having people get out of the facility last year at 2:30 because many times up until probably 30 minutes would take for someone to actually exit the facility. So speaking more to the liability aspect, if anybody is on the pool deck during that time, we want to make sure that we have lifeguard staff and properly trained people that are on deck as well. This year, really in efforts to try to make it as available as possible to the community members. We're going to say till 3 o'clock, fingers crossed that we're not going to run into too many issues with extremely delayed departures, I guess I would say. But we're still working within the same timeframes. We made some choices as to how we kind of presented that last year, and equally made slightly different considerations for this year. But don't know exactly how that's going to play out in real time, if that makes sense.
Sounds good.
Yeah, and I would just say that, we did originally want to get something into the activity guide, as, just to make sure that we're getting notification and publicity out there as early as possible. It does say till Friday there, but after discussing and really an effort to try to bring the cost down to a certain extent, we eliminated Fridays. And so it is Monday through Thursday at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, one of the additional modifications that took place is that last year we did have it as Saturdays as a possibility for people to come in for lap swim. We did reach a great understanding with the Tamalpais Union High School District to additionally reduce costs for the town, and that's that Saturdays we're going to focus on our free swim program. So with that as well, the Tamalpais Union High School District is going to waive the rental fee on Saturdays for that, since we don't have any paid programming, but it's just outreach community work that we're going to be doing.
So just to follow up to that, does that mean no lap swimming allowed on Saturdays?
If we want to make it so that we don't have to pay rent, then yes, correctly, we would only have lap swim Mondays through Thursdays.
Can I ask what the Tamalpais Union High School District is charging you in rent for this community time?
For the community time, are you referring to the Saturday program?
The whole weekly, if you can give me a weekly, or
I can
are
give
they
you an
charging
hourly.
by the
It's gonna be
hourly,
easier.
or?
$62 per hour for half the pool.
So that's where the Saturdays comes in, that you would only have half the pool on Saturdays?
No,
or-
with the exception of Saturdays, we wouldn't, they will waive the rental fee if we are not having paid programming. For example, if we're not offering, if we're having it as an outreach program, I guess might be the better way of saying it. So working with low-income communities, providing essential life skills and outreach programming, they're willing to donate the pool space to us on Saturdays. Contrary to that, if it were something that the council wanted to do, we did do original proposals for Saturdays to have both, but with both meaning the outreach program and lap swim and family swim, the district would be charging for those rental prices, and we would need additional lifeguards as well.
So if it was just the community, just Corte Madera swimming free laps on Saturday, there's no paid programming there. So could it be just Corte Madera only on Saturday, since they get in free?
My
I mean,
understanding.
you're gonna get 2 or 3 lap swimmers. It's really.
No, I understand. I mean, really, it's not something that has to do with my personal thoughts on this one. My understanding from the district, based on the relationship that we've had at other sites, primarily at Tam High School in Mill Valley, where for close to 10 years, we've been running outreach programming directed with Marin City community programs. That they waive the rental costs for that. So if it's a program that parallels that type of use, they are willing to waive the rental fees. If it's something that doesn't parallel that use, that's something that is outside of my personal consideration as to whether I believe it should or should not be. The district has said that that would still be charged.
Do you
We could
think?
bring it back to the district and ask them that specific question, that if we can incorporate lap swim, we're not charging a fee. We wouldn't be able to answer that right now because
That's okay.
we would want their explicit permission, not to make assumptions about what they're okay with.
Remind them that they offer lap swim programs at both Tam and Archie Williams. The Tamalpais Union High School District does on its own and does not at Redwood. So to provide equity to the community, it seems like they should try to bend over backwards there.
Perhaps they'd be willing to do it as a gesture of goodwill to the town of Corte Madera.
That would be very nice. So I just have a couple questions. Actually, one. The legacy of the Redwood High School pool back before the new pool was built is that the kids would ride their bikes over and jump into the pool and have a great time. And there's all kinds of people my age who'll talk about, oh my God, it was the thing to do every summer, all summer. And then when the new pools got built, everything was renegotiated and changed. But I'm wondering, is there a way that, say, a 14-year-old, if they can prove that they're a good swimmer, could come on their own? Maybe even 12 years old. I mean, you know, we've got swim team, we've got Tidal Wave swim team, which is training hundreds of kids to swim. And a lot of them just want to come and swim. And I know their parents don't want to sit there.
I
So,
remember it was the same thing for me growing up too.
so is there something we can try and say, okay, if you can prove, you know, you can swim 25 yards up and back. If
I mean, I
Give me
think it
an IM.
ultimately comes down to a liability question, and don't have the legal experience to kind of jump into that conversation. But if there was a way legally that we could approach it in a responsible way, absolutely, that's something that we would be open to.
I mean, I don't want to increase our liability any, but
So,
I just want to live up to the.
well, can I have a follow-up question?
Oh,
to that?
sure.
So what I would ask is, you know, when I've seen children being left at birthday parties, for example, right? They have the waivers that the parents have to sign before they're allowed to do that type of activity. If we could get a parental waiver at a certain age that anyone's comfortable with within your insurance that says that under supervision of a lifeguard, they could be left unattended under 18, maybe that's something that could be explored.
Yeah, happy to
Maybe.
explore
I don't
it.
know. I'm asking that as a question, but
It may adjust our requirements for lifeguards. It would have a small incremental cost, but we can explore that.
what I'm hearing from council also is perhaps they might also be interested in exploring that incremental cost as a better benefit to the community, maybe. So
Yeah, it sounds like that's a high priority for the council, so we can definitely look into that.
we'll determine that during deliberation, I think. So. Okay.
Good idea.
Okay, Rosa, did you have any more questions? Rosa, do you have any questions?
No. Later.
I added some questions. So I'm not familiar with the Redwood Pool yet. Does it have, we have residents and children that have real accessibility needs that are wheelchair bound. Are you able to facilitate at that facility swim and access to those type of children that might have disabilities, or even adults in wheelchairs and stuff? Does that pool support that type of
Has a lift,
it does have the lift?
the chair. It also has stairs. There's one lane that's 3.5 feet deep.
Uh-huh.
The rest of the pool is deep. So there is access in one lane. That's shallow, but most of the pool is more suitable for more skilled swimmers.
Okay. Yeah, because I'd like to know that they're supported, and I have seen with this accessibility that there are some swim programs that also provide some type of staffing to help in those situations. There's actually organizations that do that as well as part of not just low income, but for these other abilities. So I would ask if it's if there's an ability that we explore whether that could be supported as well. So the 50,000 that the town is going to provide, that goes to you for the administration, and then you're paying, the school receives the money as rent from you when it's for profit lessons and that type of thing. Otherwise, you're going to be staffing when it's free. That's also what we're helping compensate for. Is that my understanding?
Correct.
Okay.
The Saturday program.
Right. Yeah, please.
District just discounted our pool because of the free component. That's why we don't pay the full pool rent. We pay the half pool rent, even though most of our time will actually be the full.
Okay.
I think also, I mean, there's the lifeguard, basically staff that the money would be going to be paying for lifeguards. I don't know exactly how many lifeguards are needed during the week. Lifeguards during the week, obviously also some the rent that we talked about. There is some general administration as well, as I understand it, that would be part of the town's money would be going towards that. And so those are the basic, I think the larger line items.
Yeah, I think something that we were able to uniquely do this year after conversations with Adam was to, instead of funding the program for possibly where we see it in 3 to 4 years from now, funding it where we see it now, and working with flexibilities that we have from the district who owns the facility, to, for example, charge us half pool rent, even though at times we may have access to the entire pool. So there's, through some of those negotiations, we've been able to find ways to lower that budget. And then we've also had talks in the future about realistically reaching out to other jurisdictions that have easy access to that facility as well. So, I mean, ultimately access to facilities, whether it be aquatics or others, shouldn't ultimately just rely on one jurisdiction. We come from a community with a lot of resources. I grew up here in Marin, spent the majority of my life here, and there are a lot of resources, whether it be with aquatics or I'd say the majority of other things that we can imagine.
I have another question about the future and the relationship with SOMA about aquatics is also over in that. Do you also do, besides pools, all aquatic activities? So say access to boating or sailboating or other kayaking or other types of, do you encourage all water activities or is it specific to swim in pools?
I'd say at the moment, our mission is specific to pools. As to this, once again, my personal reality is different than that. I love boating. I grew up sailing, water skiing out in San Francisco Bay. There are other organizations as well that have opportunities for access through kayaking or sailing. That's not something that we have explored at the moment, but it doesn't mean that it's something that we're not open to exploring. Our first step really comes to water safety and making sure that if people want to participate in those activities, they're going to know how to swim, which gives them the opportunity to maybe consider sailing camp or consider going out in a kayak, because the majority of people I know that don't know how to swim won't step anywhere near a kayak. And what that does in any community is that marginalizes those people that don't have that comfort level, and it takes them out of the overall dynamic that's going on in the communities.
We have been partnering with other organizations to try to link to organizations that can build on our core mission of access, but access branching out once a kid has water safety. For instance, swim program I run in Mill Valley, we endow graduates of the SOMA program with scholarships for the swim team. So for instance, we have 3 kids who came out of the swim lesson program, joined the swim team. Now they'll have scholarships. 2 are 9, 1 is 7. They may have scholarships for up to 12 years on the team. Give them access in that next step with swimming, which also, there's a lot of studies that show that the peer group of a kid has tremendous influence on life outcomes, and that being in an environment with kind of affluent, high achieving kids can help a kid in a disadvantaged background achieve those same goals that those affluent kids get because they have exposure to some of the services. So we're hoping this will be a platform to connect with other organizations. For example, the Tidal Wave swim team. We love to see kids come out of this program, our free swim lessons at Redwood, and join that team because that's geographically, where their community is. So we can imagine that with the rowing club as well, in Green Bay, for example. We haven't connected with them, but building upon what you're saying, that there's possible alliances.
Okay, that while you were speaking, is there diving facilities that would be accessible to the public at Redwood?
Like
Platform,
diving,
yeah, like
or
diving boards.
there
Do
are
they?
2 springboards that they have both.
Would you be allowed to use them like on the Saturday free swim?
We'll Well, one, I would say yes, but also not just in the Saturday free swim program, during the family, drop-in opportunities, they can use those too.
That's great. So the other one is when it, where are lifeguards trained and certified in Marin?
There's different programs. I can only speak to what I know myself, which is with the American Red Cross. I know they have some programs at the Mill Valley Community Center. Just like there and other places, people are struggling finding lifeguards. I think the benefit that we have is over the past few years, we've grown our volunteer base. We have over 30 volunteers right now that work at 2 different programs going on in Mill Valley. And through that, we can sometimes pull some of them that are looking for summer jobs. They may not be certified as lifeguards, but as I spoke to earlier, we do have the opportunity to offer those programs for them to certify them based on Red Cross standards.
And you would do that through Mill Valley. There's no need to do it through access to this pool or through
The Mill Valley program isn't one that we teach ourselves. That's the Mill Valley Recreation Department.
Actually teaches and
that
promotes
teaches.
Lifeguard safety and can certify.
That
or is that-
certifies their own. I believe there, and I could be.
But that's just
misspeaking, but
involvement through the Red Cross, it sounds like. So it's actually outside the Parks and Rec. It's a relationship with Red Cross that just gets access to the
It's
Mill
a,
Valley pool.
it's a certified instructor who at this moment happens to be also employed, I believe, by the city of Mill Valley. Previously, that individual was not in that role, and the city then would reach out to that individual just like they might to others to run those programs.
Okay, all right. I appreciate it. I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent, but it's all tied together, I think, sometimes. Is there any other questions based on all that? Okay, so I'll close council questions and open it up to the public. Is there any public comment to this agenda item? You'll have 3 minutes. You can step up to the podium if interested. Seeing none in person.
No, we don't have any emailed public comment or hands raised from the one attendee.
Okay, so then I'll close public comment and bring it back to the dais for any comment and direction. We're looking for a resolution to adopt the resolution as requested. Anyone have any final comments?
I'm just ready to second.
Okay.
Make a motion. Make a
Well,
motion.
ultimately, I think that, yeah, do you want to make any comments?
I have a couple of comments.
Yeah,
If
I'd
you
like
want
to
to go
make a
back, go
few
ahead, Pat.
Yeah, I'd like to make a few comments. Okay.
I just have a couple comments. I think you guys are great, by the way. This is my first introduction to both of you. I just think you're great. You totally love what you're doing. I think that's going to reflect in this program that we have or that you came up with for us. I think it's a great alternative to our swimming pool. One of the number one things in our master plan was a swimming pool in Corte Madera that got tabled by our Park and Rec Commission. One of them, it's the cost of it and it's land. Where can we find land? So I think this is a great alternative to that. I think it's a great program when you're taking young kids, especially on lower income qualified families, and trying to teach them how to swim. I think that's a life lesson and it's a life skill that's great. I would suggest on communication, if you haven't done already, you reach out to Corte Madera Larkspur School District. And like these flyers, if you can, I think they go out in backpacks or something like that once a week or in their newsletter. I would hit that market again with the school district. Because again, that's hitting families and youths. And also make sure that you include in the Casa Buena. It's our permanent supported housing project located in Corte Madera. If we approve this, we're only approving up to $50,000. I don't know if you come back saying if you go 14 and above versus 18, if there's an additional cost. And the same thing with Saturday lap swim. I don't know if staff, if you're going to have to come back to us for an additional allocation. Hopefully in a perfect world, everything would be under 50,000. But I just want to point that out if you guys would have to come back to us. Otherwise, I can totally support this. And again, you guys are really great.
Eli, anything?
Amazing pilot program. Very happy to support it.
Yeah. Did you want to speak to Fred's
Just about cost.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think again, I look for direction from council first. So I don't want to speak to it unless that's sort of a council direction. So I'll just leave it
Okay.
for now.
All right.
No need to
All
speak
right,
to it.
so, yeah, so we can, you heard Fred's asking if there's additional cost for some of these other requirements. Is that something that we would be comfortable with? Staff, basically, it's under a certain amount. They could still go beyond that as part of the pilot program, or do we want to cap it at 50 and not allow those?
Okay, my question is, are we then changing what we are actually voting on? What I'm meaning is, the question in front of us in the report is just, do we support the 50,000 for this pilot program? And I think the word pilot is really important rather than tagging different, more age groups and different things. Let's just see, I would suggest, let's see what the response is as is for a year and get some real data, because we don't have it yet. And then think about tagging things on or adding or subtracting. We don't know, so.
I'm seeing forehead shake, so,
Okay.
yeah.
Can I make just a
Of
comment?
course.
So I think I did the math, and my math isn't great, but it works out to about $350 an hour is our cost for running this program, and deducting the rent from that's $290 or so an hour. It seems to me to cover, I think last year there were 2 or maybe 3 lifeguards there, mostly 2. It seems like it should be enough. I know there are other costs, but I wouldn't feel comfortable with going over the $50,000 this year. So let's say we can only accommodate any changes that we want to make if we can still do it within the 50 grand, at least for this first year.
Okay.
Because it got out of control yesterday. And I would love to see, and I'm sure Adam's getting this, is an accounting for, how that money is being spent, because it does seem like a lot to me. I think it seems really valuable. I love what you are doing. I love that you have our fellow competitive SEALs coach kind of involved and looking in competitive to the tidal wave swim team. I mean, so I can really support this. And I would like to just say that I'm still working, hopefully through the Tamalpais Union High School District Board, to get more support for community open programs at Redwood, because somehow in those negotiations for the new swimming pools, we got left out. We don't have a lap swim program for the community. I'm glad to hear that you are doing work at TAM, so you're already familiar with the pool and the fact that the water polo people were in charge when the pools were built. So we have these pools that have no shallow end, nothing for families, nothing for the community. And it's really just a full-on competitive pool, but you've made it work. The noodles really help. Everybody's got a noodle in the pool. So thank you. And I hope we can pass it.
Yeah. Is there any other comment? Okay, so a few things that I wanted to say. When it comes to metrics about childhood water safety, you can't put a price on it because it's preventable. I have had multiple ER doctors have panic attacks when they see children around water without water safety like gear, because they are on the front line of what happens if they're not safe. And it should be accessible to everyone. And I definitely agree. It's right there with speech prevention type systems. And I think for me, it speaks really personally. I have one of my best friends joined the Navy, and he never got the opportunity to swim where he grew up. And I always teased him because they make you jump in a pool to show that you can swim in the Navy, and he couldn't. So he went off to the side and they put him in Navy intelligence. And I was like, how intelligent are you if you join the Navy without being able to swim? But ultimately, he didn't have this. It's a cruel joke, right? Here he is servicing the country, protecting us, but he doesn't even have all the assets he needs to do it. And he still did it, and he did a great job. And so I don't want that to happen with the next generation. And so I like that there's an equity component to this. I think that 50,000 to save one child is still very cheap. And so I don't care how many people go to it, as long as the right people go to it. I think that, there's talk about the master plan. There's other water, there's a lot of water here, like we've all acknowledged, but there's also this acknowledgement that there's a plot of land over there that could access and open up even more future water safety opportunities for the community. And tying those two together and understanding that whole component that's over there as a Parks and Rec offering could be an opportunity to consider in the future. And just in general, I'm really excited about this. I've been here since 2012. I've heard nothing but everybody saying they want access to a pool, whether they use it or not. It's something we want our tax dollars to support. And so once that box has been checked, it's available, right? And it's just the idea of availability to the public. If that's all that they need, then that's worth doing, because that's what we're tasked as stewards of the town to provide, right? And we can't do it economically at other facilities anymore. And I also like this benefit of existing resource utilization and infrastructural, like paying whatever they will accept to help keep those facilities running when otherwise they wouldn't be utilized, right? So many wins on this one. So definitely I would like to see a motion if there's no other comments.
Go ahead, Fred.
Hold on, I gotta find the resolution. Thank you. See, I can blow this up. I make a motion to approve resolution number 28/023.
Second.
Call for a vote.
Councilmember Casissa.
Yes.
Councilmember Ravazio,
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Beckman,
Yes.
Mayor Lee.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries.
All right. And that closes. Thank you very much.
Thank
you.
All right. So moving on to item 6C, I will need to recuse myself from this item. And so I will be passing the baton to Vice Mayor, and I'll step out and come back for council reports. Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks. Water.
I got it. Here we go.
Just
I have
drink
it
out
here.
there.
I wanna go.
What's he stepping out? What's up next? Because he just bought a property near here, I think in the Deer Presidio area. And yeah, so he owns a property there.
All right, so this is item 6C on tonight's agenda. We're looking at potentially authorizing the Director of Public Works to approve plans and contract documents and authorize the advertisement of bids for the San Clemente Pump Station Outfall Pipe Rehabilitation Project number 22-001. Turn it over to staff.
Thank you. Good evening, council. My name is Chris Good. I'm a senior civil engineer with Public Works. And I will be presenting and giving some background on the San Clemente Pump Station Outfall Pipe Rehabilitation Project. Okay, cool. So to give some background, San Clemente Pump Station is one of our larger flood control pump stations. It's shown in blue there on Madera del Presidio Drive in East Corte Madera, and it collects water from a 410-acre watershed, which includes Marin Estates, part of Ring Mountain, some of Meadow Sweet, and Madera del Presidio. And it collects it into an open channel and then pumps it out to San Clemente Creek, which is right next to fire station number 13. So that is, and so here, this is LiDAR showing the elevations around this area. So you can see like near where Nugget Market is and the pump station, it's the elevation's below 6 feet. And as you may know, king tides these days are at 7.2 feet. So without the pump station there, if we were to have a high tide and a storm at the same time, we'd have major flooding in that area, which is part of the reason they installed it in the first place. So it's definitely an important facility. So in this slide, we're seeing where the outfall pipe goes. So it runs from the pump station up Madera del Presidio Drive, and then turns down Paradise to the creek And so bottom left is a picture of the pump station itself. You can see the pipes coming out and then they dive underground. Bottom right is the outfall at the head of the creek. So to give a brief history, pump station was built in 1987 to address flood risk in East Corte Madera. In 2010, they had to, the town had to replace the discharge manifold due to corrosion damage. That's the picture on the top right. That was a fairly major project. And then in 2016 and 2021, we had to address sinkholes that formed near the pump station. And those are both due to holes that had formed in another piece of pipe due to corrosion. And then there's been two other occasions where sinkholes have opened up on Paradise Drive and Madera del Presidio that required emergency repairs. And those were due to failures in the reinforced concrete pipe that runs down Madera del Presidio and Paradise. So just to quickly go over the issues that we have encountered. So corrosion has caused a large hole to form, and that's the video you see on the right. It's large enough that that individual can stick their whole hand inside the pipe. And so that's what caused the sinkholes to form near the pump station. And so that's what kind of alerted us to the issues. And then once we started investigating, we found a lot of other issues. So the interior of the steel pipe had liners originally, and they're all worn away, which is causing more corrosion. So, and we had a geotech do a boring, and they have let us know that there's been 27 inches of ground settlement already around the pump station. So that is causing a lot of stresses on the pump station building itself. You can see on the bottom left, the front wall has major cracks in it, and it's there's not a lot of concrete left. And so the pipe is getting stressed as the pump station has deep foundation, so it's not moving, and the pipe is getting pulled down, so it's causing major problems. You can see in the bottom photo that the foundations are completely separated now. And then they looked into how much settlement there is left, and they're forecasting or they're anticipating another 11 inches near the pump station, and then up to 25 inches of future settlement on Paradise Drive. So that problem will continue to get worse over time if it's not addressed. And then the last issue is just that the pipe components, such as the air release valves, check valves, and expansion joints are all at the end of their useful life. So they need to be replaced anyways. So this is just a drawing pulled from the plans, but basically the top is existing and the bottom's proposed. So they're pretty similar. We're replacing most of the pipes in kind. The main difference that I want to point out is the existing pipes are welded steel, and we are proposing to replace them with HDPE. And that will greatly reduce future maintenance because they don't need to be coated. And they should last a lot longer without constant maintenance. The other thing, we're adding 3 very large expansion joints that can accommodate vertical differences up to 20 inches. So that should accommodate any settlement we have or anticipated settlement in the future. And then the other main difference is currently the manifold is buried underground, and in the new proposed version that will be above ground. So that's a benefit because we can maintain it without having to dig it up if there's ever an issue. The only difference there is that we'll have to extend the fence around. So it'll extend it out a little bit, changing the aesthetics a bit. And we have to remove 3 trees to accommodate that. So some information about bidding construction. Engineer estimate for the project's 2.3 million. Plus there's a bid alternate of 325,000. So the total is 2.64 million. And that's to rehabilitate the external outfall pipes infrastructure, as well as the pump station wall, because it needs to be repaired. And then some of the pipe materials have lead times up to 12 months. So although we're planning to bid it as soon as possible, we're anticipating construction is going to be in summer 2024, when weather will be less impactful. And so here's just one more view of that's a profile view, so you can see pump station on the left and the pumps, and then pipe comes out, it goes through the manifold, then goes underground, and then we reattach it to the existing reinforced concrete pipe that goes all the way out to St. Clemente Creek. So that's all I have for now. If you have any questions.
Great, thank you, Chris. We'll take questions from council members. Questions?
Just a couple from me. What are the trees that we're gonna lose? How big are they and what variety? And then what happens if we have another big rainy season at the end of this year and we're not doing the work until next year? What can we anticipate?
So for the trees, they're relatively small. I believe they're about 10 to 12 feet. I don't remember what type of trees they are, maybe pine. I'm not sure if we planted them or if they just started growing there. So, but they're relatively small.
Not likely to have any concerned residents voicing save the trees for those.
I don't believe so. They wouldn't even require a tree permit through the town, so
Okay,
I don't,
good.
yeah. And then your second question.
Second question was, since we can't do the construction till 2024, what would happen if we had another winter like this one? Is it going to be catastrophic, or are there
Well,
short-term?
we had to do the emergency repair in 2021, so it's already survived at least 2 winters. So we're just kind of finger crossed it'll make it one more. But worst case, we would just have to do another emergency repair if another sinkhole forms. But so far it's been okay.
Great. Any other questions down at that end?
Nope.
Okay.
Come to this end.
Yes, sir.
Like the video, by the way. That was great.
Yeah.
We get more of those. This is more of an Adam question. It looks like the total project is around 3 million. It's coming out of the sales tax money. How are we tracking that money? Because I think we have 3 million towards the overpass project. We have another 1.5 million we dedicated towards the Paradise bicycle path. So all of a sudden we're up to 7.5 million in sales tax money that's being committed.
Yeah, a couple of things on that. So one is this particular year, it's not the amount of funding you'll see in the budget, in the CIP budget coming before you at the next meeting is not the 2.6 million. So it can get spread out over the next couple of years as the Tamalpais overcrossing money is a one-time expenditure that will come off the books in 24-25. So yes, that's correct. And then I would also just note on the Paradise project, that is predominantly grant funded. So it's not hitting our sales tax fund. Most of that, 2/3 of that is essentially funded through the grant funds. So we've been, RJ, myself, Daria, we are talking and have been talking through all those scenarios and making sure that we're aligning obviously the funding with these projects that need to get done and making sure that we have a plan of attack for that without exceeding our going into reserves or anything like that. So.
Okay, thanks. And one question for Chris, which I'll leverage off what Pat said. Any chance to replace the trees? And I can't tell where those trees are at because I can't tell if you're driving down the street. Is that one of those trees where those trees are partially blocking pipes? You know, so if you don't replace them, you're going to drive by there and now you're going to see this pipe sticking out of the ground.
Yeah, I think that's a possibility that we considered it. The only question is like what the irrigation setup is there, or is there any? So that can kind of snowball if we have to add all those facilities, but we can definitely look into it.
Thank you. I was going to ask about replacing trees as well, because I think that's important for us to be doing when, just as a general practice, when we're taking down trees. My other question, just curious about that shade sail. Is that because HDPE like degrades in the sun, or?
Partially, our consultant told us that the HTP has its own like protection built in, so it shouldn't be an issue, but they recommended it just as like a further precaution.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alrighty, cool. Any other questions? All right, so we're going to take public comment. Does our wonderful member of the public wish to speak? Anyone online or via email?
Same person online, no hands raised and no emailed public comment.
Okay, so we'll bring it back to council for discussion or motion.
I'll move, we support staff and make this allocation so that they can get going. Thank you.
I'll second.
Councilmember Casissa.
Yes.
Councilmember Avazio.
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Beckman.
Yes.
Mayor Lee abstained, or has recused himself, sorry, and the motion carries.
Was that a specific enough motion? So that was to a motion to authorize the Director of Public Works to approve the plans and contract documents and authorize the advertisement for bids for the San Clemente Pump Station Outfall Pipe Rehabilitation Project number 22-001.
That was great. Also, the record should reflect that the mayor recused himself because he owned property within 500 feet of the pump station.
Noted. Thank you. All right, and let's bring the mayor back.
Bring the mayor back. There's he.
Charles.
Finish your pizza.
Right.
There's all the waste there.
Sounds great. Sounds like I'll have, better be organic. There you go.
Yeah, beautiful garden.
All right. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Good step
Thanks,
forward, by the
Chris.
way.
Nice video. Up your bar a little bit.
All right, well, with the resolution of item 6C, we can move on to item number 7, which is council reports. Town Manager Adam Wolf, do you have a report for us?
No reports this evening.
Okay, so then we'll move to town council reports.
Oddly, I have no report.
I have no report.
Hi, John. I attended the Central Marin Police Authority Council meeting. Mayor Lee was there also. It's budget season, so we discussed the budget. I think there's about 3.5 increase to Corte Madera, so there's nothing really significant there. While we're on Central Marin Police Authority, also had the opportunity to do a ride along with, I'll just say Sergeant Pio. Can't pronounce his last name. I think Eli kind of mentioned this last meeting when he wanted to ride along. I would highly suggest it. You just get a different perspective on what the officers do. But I think the interesting part for me was actually having a discussion with the officer while we were driving around. And it just shows you what a great police department we have, and they're totally in the community policing. It was just really eye-opening. Also attended Central Marin Sanitation Agency. And again, it was budget season on that when the budget got approved. And then the last thing is I attended and volunteered at the Touch Trucks event that was for the Friends of Larkspur Library, and that was a great event. Lots of families. Thanks.
I had a Central Marin Fire Council meeting. It was budget season, and thank you, Fred, for covering CMSA for me.
All right, I attended both those meetings that they did as well. It was budget season. So nothing out of the ordinary. I did want to mention for the Chamber of Commerce is having a mixer tomorrow night at Polster from 5:30 to 7, which will be catered by Pig in the Pickle. Is open to residents, current and future Chamber of Commerce members.
Where is Polestar?
Polestar is at the Village, next to the Restoration Hardware. I think it's in the old Restoration Hardware portion of the building, or right adjacent to it, where Williams Sonoma was or something, right around in there. But should be a good event, so encourage people to go. And my son attended Touch Trucks as well. So, so with that, we can close council reports. Discussion of draft agenda for upcoming town council meetings.
Should MCCs?
Yes, we'll be having an meeting hosted by Corte Madera at the fine establishment of RH, showcasing what best we have to offer to the region.
Yeah, so I will chime in because I was told that I need to give a town manager report apparently. No, but that same evening, it's worth mentioning as well that we are having a workshop on the reach codes, green building codes and energy codes for remodels. And so Phoebe Golden will be leading that discussion 7 o'clock next Wednesday, the 24th. So busy Wednesday. And I think all of you know, but we did receive good news from the California Department of Tax and CDTFA making us whole on that whole issue of an overpayment and the correction. And so that is good news for our budget and budget season. So here we go.
Excellent. We look forward to seeing the report on that. That'll be next agenda, right? So going to the discussion of the draft agenda. Is there anything we would like to provide for direction to staff? Okay, so with that, the meeting is adjourned.